Hello and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Jim Foster, and we look forward to sharing the cancer journey together. On today's program, we have an incredible guest with us, whose story will hopefully provide a great deal of information, encouragement, and inspiration. She is the mother of 5, grandmother of 5, a wife, a published author, a national motivational public speaker, a 5-time breast cancer survivor, the co-founder of Breast Friends, as well as the host of the Breast Friends Cancer Support Radio Network, and is joining us today from her home in Portland, Oregon. Please join me in welcoming Becky Olson to the show. Becky, welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast.
Thank you, Jim, so much. I'm really looking forward to today, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your busy day to share your story with our audience. And if you're ready, let's get right to it. Sound good?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So, Becky, before we get into talking about your cancer journey, why don't you take a few moments to tell us about yourself, like where you're from, what your life was like, what your work and interests were, and a little about your family prior to your cancer experience.
I'd be happy to. I do want to let you know that I was born in Alaska, lived in Denver for a while, which I understand you're near there.
Sure.
And now I live in Portland. I've been married to my husband, Bill, for 40 years. We have 5 children. I brought 2 of them into the marriage with me. And so we've just had a very busy life since our first day of being together. And I also worked full-time at selling Yellow Page advertising. And it was a very, very busy and very stressful job. And I did that for many years. And I was actually up to where I was working 16 hours a day, if you can imagine.
Wow.
15 to 16 hours a day was not unusual for me. And all of that changed when I had my cancer diagnosis. And I know we're going to get into that. But, the one regret I have, I think, is that I spent so much time at work because, when the end of life happens, nobody says the one thing they wish they would have done was work harder. It usually comes down to a lot better things than that. And that's where I'm trying to lead my life now, is into those better places. So,
well, wonderful. Wonderful. What was your overall health like in the years prior to cancer?
I've never had any serious health issues, before cancer. So it really caught me off guard. I've had some weight issues, never diabetes, no heart. My heart is in really great shape. And I've never had diabetes, which is kind of surprising because I did experience some pretty hefty weight gains with children and all of that, but never anything real serious that became life-threatening until cancer hit me.
Okay.
And that's where that changed.
Was there a history of cancer in your family that you knew of? And if so, what was that like?
I'm glad you said that I knew of. Cancer, breast cancer in particular, I think, back in the day, nobody talked about it. So I didn't know that I had a actually pretty heavy-duty cancer in my family that I just didn't know about. So when they asked me that question the first time, I said, no, there's no cancer in my family. And it turns out that my dad's mom had cancer. His sister had it twice, once at 35 and once at 53. And an early diagnosis like that is a sign of hereditary breast cancer. My cousin, who is my dad's niece, she also had breast cancer. She got it after I did, but we were about the same age. I was diagnosed at 43 finally. My mom had cancer, but not till later. And so she got it after I did. She's so funny. She says, I didn't think I could get cancer from you. Anyway, but we decided when I finally found all that out, we figured out that my dad's side of the family was the one posing the risk to me. And so I did find out that I do carry 2 gene mutations. I just found that out within the last couple of years, that I have 2 gene mutations that I inherited from my father. He never got cancer, but so there's no guarantee that even with a gene mutation that you will, but your risk greatly increases, and obviously mine did. So,
Right.
But his brother, his niece, we all got the same genetic breakdown. So came through his mom.
Well, was there something that caused you to think something was wrong, or was it a regular checkup, or how did that occur?
In my mid 30s, that mammograms generally start at age 40, and I know there's been some effort to move that to 50, and we've actually done some lobbying in Congress to not allow that to happen, to keep it at 40. And they don't determine, what age it happens, but what they do determine is insurance payouts. And so
Sure.
we want the insurance companies to keep paying out at age 40. So anyway, I digress there for a moment. But in my late 30s, 36, I think, I actually found a lump in my breast. And it scared me because I didn't know I had a family history, but I know lumps don't belong there. And I went in for a mammogram, and my doctor looked at the results, and he told me that what that was just a fibrous mass, just some tissue mass, and not to worry about it. Well, he didn't say don't ever worry about it. That's what I heard. We tend to hear what we want to hear. And I heard him say, I don't ever have to worry about that. It's just fibrous tissue, not a problem. And so for the next 7 years, that fibrous tissue grew and just kept getting bigger. And it was just across the top of my right breast. And it just, it just got bigger, but it grew so slowly, I didn't really pay attention to it. And one day I went in for just a physical I wanted to try to lose some weight, and I wanted to see my doctor first. And so it was a wonderful nurse practitioner named Madeline Anderson. I love her to this day. She saved my life. She felt that lump, and she asked me when my last mammogram was. And I said it was 7 years ago. And she said, well, I'm not going to let you leave here today until we make an appointment for you to get one. She suspected something was off, and I had no idea. I mean, there was no pain. There was no pain associated, no side effects, nothing, just this lump that was growing. So I finally went in for a mammogram, for an ultrasound, actually. No, that's not true. Ultrasound followed the mammogram. I went in for a routine mammogram just to rule out the fact that it was probably still just fibrous tissue. And lo and behold, no, it turned out not to be. And there was actually about a walnut-sized tumor inside of that mass, and it had spread to my lymph nodes. And so it was already considered stage 3 at that point in time. So it's pretty serious, but yeah, that's how we found it.
Wow. So I guess you would say it's important to continue with preventative checkups, even if you get a kind of a false negative test early on, to not take it for granted that it may not eventually develop into something.
Yeah. When we found it, I was 43. And had I started my routine mammograms now at 40, knowing I had that one at 36, if I would have started at 40, we would have caught it 3 years earlier. And it's possible that it wouldn't have, been as big, or, whatever. We just might have been easier to treat because it wouldn't have gotten into my lymph nodes maybe. So age 40 is a great age to really consider starting those routine mammograms. The problem with doing them any earlier than that, and at 35 or 36, when I found that lump, it's very possible that the only reason they didn't see that there was cancer in that fibrous tissue is because cancer cells turn out white on an ultrasound. And if you have dense breast tissue, which I did at that time, it's also white. And so it's hard to spot cancer in a dense breast. Now, since then, I think they've developed new procedures that make that a little bit easier, but we're talking 30 years ago.
Gosh, things change rapidly.
And so 30 years ago, they couldn't see the difference, and probably didn't even know the difference between dense breast tissue, and they just didn't know about it. So I think that that's really important. If you have dense breasts and they tell you there's a lump there, or you feel a lump there, don't rule out the fact that it may be cancer, because they could see it. They could see it at 43 clearly on an ultrasound. So go for more than just the mammogram. Have them do an ultrasound if they need to, just to completely rule out what that lump is and make sure.
Sure.
You could see the shape of the tumor. It was pretty revealing, actually.
Wow. Now, and we'll get into it a little bit later. I know that you've had some relapses and been through this 5 different times, but in general, your first time as well as the other times, how did you feel when you had gotten through the diagnosis process and starting your decision about treatments? Was there decisions you had to make about what type of treatment to take? Were there options that you had to decide on, or did your doctor say, hey, here's one clear path forward for your type of breast cancer?
Well, there's the oncologist and then there's the surgeon. And where I struggled, the first decision you have to make, well, that I had to make, and, understanding that every cancer journey is going to be a little bit different, and they're going to do things differently based on the size of the tumor. There's so many factors that go into this. But if you have a doctor that you trust, and that's important, that you have a good feeling about the doctors that you're working with. And if you don't, get a second opinion. I trusted my doctors. I didn't feel that I needed a second opinion. But the first thing I had to do was figure out surgically if I was going to do a mastectomy and remove that breast entirely, or I didn't even know a lumpectomy existed, and that's where they just remove the lump itself. I didn't even know about that option. So I was kind of struggling with that a little bit when he told me that lumpectomy was something that we could do. And what that meant is, at that time, I was pretty well endowed, and to remove one full breast or even a half of one would make them very uneven. And I didn't like that idea very much of being uneven, but I also didn't like, the idea of not having one at all. So it was a tough decision. And the part of that decision was, if you do a lumpectomy, then they always request that you also get radiation. And radiation then makes reconstruction harder later. So there's a lot of factors that went into that first decision. Sure. And I did end up deciding on the lumpectomy and with radiation. And part of that is because my surgeon was from the Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute, which is huge. And he had been recruited out here to Providence. But I trusted him. I trusted his knowledge on that. And he said that lumpectomy followed by chemo and radiation was as effective as a mastectomy in treating the problem. So I went ahead and ended up doing that. Again, I had to think about reconstruction down the road, but I thought, I'll get there when I get there. And assuming I did get there, which I did, obviously. And so it was hard. That was the hardest part. As far as chemo went, I trusted my oncologist. She was great. And, told me I was going to have 11 months of chemo, which shocked me. I had no idea it was going to be that involved, but it was 9 months of chemo, 11 treatments in 9 months. And so that was hard, but it just was. So I didn't even get a second opinion on that one.
Okay. Now, was your treatment center in the town you lived in at the time, or did you have to travel?
Nope. Very fortunate that Portland, in spite of all the problems we're hearing on the air right now with all of the riots and things going on, that is all confined to just a couple city blocks, just let people know. But we have great medical care here. Doctors come here, world-class doctors from all over. We've got amazing, amazing support and treatment here. So we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, you're fortunate you didn't have to travel. A lot of people do have to temporarily kind of relocate for their treatments. Did your treatments or lumpectomy and so forth, did that cause you to spend time overnight in the hospital at all, or was it all done outpatient?
I want to say it was outpatient, but we're talking 20 years ago.
So, but in general, it was outpatient. It
was generally outpatient, yeah. And then, of course, the chemo treatments, you just go into a chemo center for that, and you're in and out in a few hours. And but I think that the lumpectomy was, I think that was just a one-day procedure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with the chemotherapy, did that cause you to lose your hair? And if so, what was that like?
That, when you talk about what was the hardest part about going through this, I know the hair seems like it's such a superficial thing to be, sweating about, but, I was already overweight. I always consider myself approaching middle age, because, see, to me, middle age is always 20 years from wherever you are right now.
Sure.
So in 85, I'll be middle age finally. But when I'm 85, then it'll hit me at 105, whatever. Anyway, so I was approaching middle aged at 43, and then again having a little weight issue, and now I was going to be bald. And the thought of that, honestly, Jim, was so frightening to me, because you know, for a woman, we've already lost so much, you know, when we lose a part of a breast or all of our breasts, and then you got tubes dangling for the chemo. They got to put it in through these little pipelines, I call them. And, you know, so you already feel ugly that way. And now you're going to be bald. And it's just, that was really, truly more than I could handle at that time. As silly as that sounds, you know, people say to me all the time, oh, it's just hair, it'll grow back. And my first instinct to say to them is, you know what, you shave your head and then we'll talk about that. Because then it's really hard. What I have going on right now, this is not my normal hair. This is my husband's attempt to keep up with my chemo fallout, because I'm on chemo again for my 5th battle. And it is falling out a little slower this time. It fell out after the first treatment, 100%. It just went. I took about a week for it to fall out, and it was gone by my next treatment.
Well, you would never know if you hadn't just told us that, because it's a very nice hairstyle that you have.
Well, he's been using some shears on it to just keep up with it, or do again, because it's getting kind of thin here on the top. Look at that. I can still comb it over, though. So as long as I have hair to comb over it, I'm good. But once that's gone, then we're just going to shave it, probably on camera, and it'll be posted on my Facebook page like I did the first time around. But anyway,
well,
it was fun.
That's wonderful that you're considering doing that. And
yeah. Well, you know, humor,
inspiration to a lot of people.
I think humor is so important. And I think one of the things that I find in going through my battles is there are certain people who kind of shy away because they don't know what to say. And it's not because they don't love you or care about you. It's because they don't know what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing.
Right.
And so they just kind of don't say anything. And then they feel guilty because too much time has passed and they haven't said anything. And now they don't know how to come back into your life and say something. So to anybody listening today, I want to say to you, if you're that friend who kind of shied away and you're trying to figure out what to do, just pick up the phone and say, you know, I watched this podcast today and it made me think of you. And I'm so sorry that I have fallen out of your life. And I want to promise to be here for you. And don't say that unless you mean it. But if you mean that, your friend, if they were having any negative thoughts about it at all, will probably just let it go and say, wow, thank you. I'm so glad you called. And then just start from there. That's one piece of advice I want to give, because
that's great advice.
Will think that you've abandoned them unless you do that. And it's okay. That's how you fix it. It's a simple fix.
Just
so
a simple phone call, reach out and let them know you're thinking about them. And
that's right. And I have a friend. Can I tell the story about my book? Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's hear about the book. And I know that kind of came with your hair loss. So tell us about that.
And it really was written after my first diagnosis. So since then, there have been 4 new ones, but no new books yet. So I'm working on one, though. Anyway, this book is called The Hat That Saved My Life. Ta-da! So I should have probably shown you this after I tell the story, because now you'll know.
No, that's perfect.
But I have a friend named Patty. I love Patty. I had been out and let me backtrack just for a moment. Okay.
Okay, sure.
So right after all my hair fell out, you know, when you put a scarf on a bald head or a hat on a bald head on a woman, what do people think? That you're going through cancer, right?
Right.
It just tells the story without saying a word. Everyone knows you have cancer. So one day I did that. I wore a hat. I actually had a scarf on, and then I put a hat over the scarf thinking that would trick them somehow, but it didn't. And I went out to meet my friends for lunch, and we were at this restaurant. And as I was walking past this table with a tray of food, it was a buffet, and I was walking to the table, and this older lady said to her lady friend, they were looking right at me, and she said, "Oh, that poor thing, I'll bet she's got cancer." And Jim, the last thing I want to be seen as is that poor thing. I don't want to be pitied for all of this. I don't want to be that poor thing. And I didn't know it until that very moment, because that stung really bad when she said that. So I got to the table and I said to my friends, I said, you know, I just had an experience that tells me something. I am not going to go out in public again until my hair grows back. So if you guys want to see me, you're going to have to come to my house. You know, it's just the way it is.
Right.
And now with COVID, that makes it even harder. But it, you know, we didn't have COVID back then, and
Sure.
I just wanted to know that. I didn't want to be that poor thing in public. So I did not go out. I came home and I told my husband, I said, honey, guess what? You get to do all the grocery shopping from now on, because I'm not going out till my hair grows back. And so he did the grocery shopping, and he came home with, you know, everything for dinner except dinner. You know, we had ice cream and we had chips. And and I said, okay, so what's for dinner? And he goes, I'll be right back. We have to start again. But anyway, that was just kind of funny. He wasn't used to shopping for all of us. Anyway, so that was a really unpleasant experience. And then about a month, maybe a month and a half later, it was on 4th of July, 1996. I'll never forget the day because it was Independence Day. And this couldn't have been any more appropriate than to give me this gift on Independence Day. My friend called me and she said, Becky, I would love to come by and see you. I have a gift for you. And are you home? I said, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. So she came to my house and she had, when I greeted her at the door, she had this paper bag and there was something in it. And she gave me a hug and I could hear the bag crinkle, and I had no idea what was in it. So she said to me, she goes, Dennis found this. Dennis was her husband. And she said, he found this and he wants you to have it, but he's scared to give it to you because he's not sure how you'll take it. So he let her do it, which is funny by itself. But anyway, so she said, I'm not going to give this to you though, unless you promise to take it with a sense of humor and know it's given to you in love. And now I'm super curious, right? So she did that. And she handed me the bag. I said, well, yeah, of course. And I couldn't wait now to see what's in this bag. So I opened it up and I looked inside and I started to get kind of choked up. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. So, I should have pulled it out so I could show it to you. Anyway, it's a little black and white baseball cap. You know what? Pause this here. I mean, not pause it, but edit.
Okay. We'll take a pause.
All right. This is my hat. And it just was so funny. It's just, I don't know if you can tell, but it's got little stick figures of bald-headed people.
That's awesome. No hair day.
No hair day. And on the back, because, when you put this hat on, you can see the bald head through here too.
Sure.
There's no hiding it. And there it says no hair day.
No hair day. Not a bad hair day, a no hair day.
Exactly. So they found this in some catalog and he ordered it for me. And, online stuff was barely a thing back then. And, but he found it in a catalog, he ordered it, they loved it, his wife brought it to me, and I loved it. And I ran in the bathroom, I took off my scarf, I put this hat on, and Jim, honestly, for the first time since all this had happened, since my hair was just completely gone, and there's a couple more funny stories, I don't have time for all of that, but, that hat, it actually put a smile on my face. I looked in the mirror and I smiled back, and I thought, this is going to work. This is going to work. And it actually eventually led to my book, The Hat That Saved My Life. And
that's awesome.
It's just a little story in here, but there's so much more to it than that. But that was what was really fun about it because, and when we talk about doing things for our friends, and trying to support them through this, it's not that Patty did anything huge or spectacular. She didn't send me on a trip somewhere. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I don't know what this cost, but it's probably $10 or something. I don't know. But
and that simple thought,
everything.
Right. That simple thought from her and her husband to get you that hat led to a happier experience for you with your cancer journey and to your book and to helping others. So that's amazing.
And the next day I actually got dressed, put on a little makeup, put the hat on, and told my husband I was going to the grocery store.
Oh, that's
I thought,
awesome.
we're about due and I'm just going to go do it myself this time and see what happens. And as I'm walking through the store, people were smiling at me and nodding at me and giving me thumbs up. And I thought, yeah, this is really cool. I almost didn't go into the store though. I got a little scared in the parking lot, but I thought, nah, I'm here. I'm going to do this. And it was really exciting. And when I got to the counter, because I'm one of these people that believes a lot of things happen in our lives for a reason. There's a meaning behind it. And I think that the hat really happened for what was going to happen next. When I got to the line at the grocery store, there was this young man in line in front of me. And I was kind of, I won't go into that because I know we have to keep our stories clean. But he knew I was looking at him for some reason, and he felt me staring, and he turned around and looked at me right in the head, and he says, "Cool hat, lady, but why'd you shave your head?" And I said, "Well, I didn't shave it. Captain Chemo did." And I was trying to be funny. And he understood what I was saying. And he just suddenly, it's like kind of slowly turned. He went, "Oh," and he turned around and with his back to me again. And I felt horrible. I just thought, oh my gosh, I've just ruined his life. What a terrible thing. And I couldn't figure out how to fix it in that moment. But then just as I was really stressing about it, he turned back and he said, is it working? And I said, yeah, so far so good. And you could just feel the tension in the line. People behind me, him, everybody there was just this huge sigh of relief, and especially in me, because I thought, okay, we got past that awkward moment. But when I got up to the counter, the gal that was working the check stand, she looked at me and she said, I love your attitude. And I said, well, it's the hat, it's not me. And she said, my mom's going through breast cancer. She's losing her hair and she's really stressing over that. Where did you get it? And I took it off my hat or my head in the middle of the store right there. I just took it off. We read the label. It says Lake Street Caps right here.
Oh, okay.
So by now, we've got some internet available, a little bit. But we've never been able to really find that hat. We couldn't find it then really either, because again, just not much available. But we couldn't find it, and it was. But I did that, and she wrote it down. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if I had a truckload of these, or like a trunk in my car? I could just go out and get her one and hand it to her. Well, I tried to find it right away, and I couldn't either. So we ended up through Breast Friends, which I know we'll talk about in a moment.
Sure.
That was one of our first projects. I met a lady that said, if I drew some images for you, would you like them? And you could put them on hats and give them to ladies who are bald. And the only condition was that we don't sell those hats, and we've never sold the hats. And so we do mail out about 700 hats a year to women all over the country that are experiencing chemo hair loss. And they send us their pictures of them wearing their hats. It's really cool. We got a map where we send them, and it's kind of neat.
That's fantastic.
It's a neat program. Now this year with COVID, it's been harder because everything's on hold. Fundraising is down. You know how it goes. But that hat has led to so many things. It led to my book. It led to one of my major stories when I go out and speak in public, as a motivational speaker. And it really stresses the importance of humor. Find ways to laugh. And I think that's what started this whole story, was with my friend Patty. So she and Dennis figured out how to bring the humor back into my life, because I love laughing. I love humor, and I can take things like this and not take offense at anything like that. But I'd forgotten, I got so serious about all this, I'd just forgotten. And they helped remind me that it's still there. And I love them for that to this very, very day. So it's the little things that we do to support the people in our lives that make a huge difference, And so I just want to stress that. Can I tell you one more quick story?
Sure,
not about the
absolutely.
hat, but just as an example of the little things. So my husband's cousin, Candace, called me one day and asked me if I was going to be home. And I said, yeah, I'll be home. She goes, well, I'm going to be by your area in a couple of hours. Can I come by for a visit? And I said, yeah, but my house is a mess. I haven't had the energy to clean it. So if you can deal with that, that's great. And she says, I'm not coming to see your house. I'm coming to see you.
Sure.
But she picked up on that. Now, I wasn't hinting at anything. I promise you. I just felt bad if she comes over and things are not, clean. I was bothered by that. But she picked up on a way she could help me that would be very, very helpful. And she showed up with a bucket of cleaning supplies.
Oh, wow.
A stack of CDs. And when she got there, I looked at her, she's got all this stuff and rubber gloves and the whole bit. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, well, you told me your house was dirty, so I'm going to clean it. And she goes, you can help, you can take a nap, you can sit and visit, whatever you want to do. It's fine, but I'm here to clean, and I need a CD player because I can't clean without my music. So that's why the stack of CDs. So we put the CDs on, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what, I can sleep when I'm dead. And right now, having her here is awesome. So at first, I just sat and visited with her. And it was great watching her just, she's doing leg lifts in the kitchen and she's wiping the counters, to her music. And what happened, though, is that her energy rubbed off on me. And I'd been watching this cobweb grow in the corner of my dining room for weeks. I mean, it was getting big and lacy, and the heater would come on and it would blow. And I would sit there and look at this thing, knowing it needed to come down, but not caring enough. It's not that I couldn't take it down and go get a broom and sweep it down, but I didn't care enough to go get the broom and sweep it down. But I did then. So when she was there, I went and got the broom. I knocked that stupid thing down, and it just felt like I had won a marathon, I mean, it was pretty amazing, but her energy rubbed off on me, and pretty soon I'm cleaning things too, and I'm feeling better, and my focus is no longer on my cancer, but on her and helping her clean my house, you know.
Well, what a true friend to really pick up on where you were at and find a way that kind of a out of the blue way to come and really make a difference in your day and your whole experience.
Yeah, it was great. And so again, it's the little things, and those are the stories I remember the most. I mean, some people gave me gift cards, and the people at my office took up a collection to come and clean my blinds and things, because we were having, the day I was diagnosed, we were having an addition put on our house. And I thought, well, good, now I can stop it. But when I got home, the roof was off. So I thought, well, can't stop it now. So there was massive dust in my house, and I'm breathing all this in. And so my staff, or my team at work, actually took up a huge collection, and they sent me $400 to hire someone to come and clean all my blinds when the project was done.
Oh, wow.
And that was really a nice effort too. I mean, amazing. And I had one friend who went out and bought, somebody else on my sales team, she went out and bought a whole bunch of Get Well cards, and she had the whole team sign every card. And then once every other day, she dropped it in the mail to me.
Oh, wow.
Every other day I go to my mailbox and I get a funny card from my team telling me that they miss me.
From the whole team.
From the whole team, and they can't wait for me to get back. Now, I found out afterwards she bought them all at once and had them all signed at once. I didn't know that, but it didn't matter. It just made me feel like, let me add this. One thing that I think all cancer patients feel when they're first diagnosed, and they don't know, you never know if you're going to be in the group that survives or not. You don't know when you first hear those words, you have cancer. I think the first thing we think of is we're going to die. And then the second thought that came to my mind is that the world's going to go on without me and no one is going to care. But when you get cards like that from your staff, it makes you realize that they do care. People do care, and they don't want you to go. And I think that's the fear when your friends kind of back away and they don't know how to help you. You start to really feel that. And there's just so much emotion that comes into play, besides the fact that you're on chemo and you're doing all this stuff and trying to get through it all. Where did my friends go? Nobody cares. They're going to just show up at my funeral to make sure that nails are not, pounded into the coffin or something. And if they show up at all,
Sure.
And so we go through those thoughts. But then when we have people that, like Patty, who brings me the hat, and Candace, who cleaned my house, you realize that people do care. And it's the little things that they do that show you that. So you don't have to be a rich person to take care of somebody. Just call and say, hey, I was thinking about you today. And what's going on? Are you up for seeing a movie? Go see a movie with somebody. Make sure it's something funny and lighthearted.
Yeah. It really is the little things. I remember just a couple of things from my experiences. I was in the hospital quite a bit, but people would pop in to see me at the hospital that I hadn't seen in a long, long time or talked to, and they would stop in, and it just meant so much to me that they would do that. And so I renewed some friendships that had kind of maybe not dwindled, but hadn't been active for a few years. And so I remember a couple of those people that stopped by. And then my second go around, when I had the stem cell transplant, I had to have platelets. Various transfusions, blood transfusions and platelets transfusion. There was this one guy, he was new at my company. I had never met him before. I never talked to him or met him or anything. His name was Jay Powers. And he was one of the people that came and donated platelets to me. And I'm like, holy cow, I've never even met this guy. So I've since met him after I got better. But anyhow, it's making me a little emotional. But there's just the simple little things. You don't have to go give platelets to someone, okay, to make this difference. But sending a card, or nowadays even with texts and just a little blurb on the email or something like that, can really make someone feel cared about. That other
Don't forget the phone. Phones still work too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes I get a text from somebody and I'll just call them because I've got their phone number because they just texted me. So I'll just call them and say, hey, I'd like to hear your voice.
Right.
I do miss talking to people. So it's, you know, it's a nice option too. So
Yeah.
just want to add that.
It's when you do find out you have cancer, I remember my thoughts, I just felt all alone, you know, and my first time was back near when you were first diagnosed, and that was kind of before the internet really got going. It was just starting, and just felt so isolated. So hopefully through your work that you're doing with Breast Friends and what we're trying to do with cancer interviews, we can help people realize that they're not alone, and there are other people out there that have stories to share and inspiration and information to share. So let me ask you real quick. I know you've been through it now several times. How did your family deal with not only your first time, but your relapses and reoccurrences? Did they play the role as kind of, you mentioned your husband as kind of your day-to-day caregiver, doing the cooking and shopping and so forth? And how were they affected, and how, what can you tell us about your family and their involvement in this whole journey?
As I mentioned, I had 5 kids, and at the time of my first diagnosis, my first 2 were older. One was going to college and down in Eugene, and the other one was living in Seattle, working up there. So they were removed from the picture somewhat, and my son would check on me periodically, but he wasn't in the house day to day. But I still had 3 kids that were still there. My daughter was 14, almost 15. Maybe she was 15. I think she was 15. And then my other 2 were 12 and 11, I believe. And so they were still there. And we didn't tell them all right away what was going on, because we wanted to wait until we knew what the treatment would be, which didn't take long, because I don't believe in waiting. To me, the waiting's the worst part, because you don't know anything while you're waiting. So we got things moving pretty quickly. And then we were getting close to the point where we needed to tell them. And one day we were sitting at home watching a movie, and my son, my youngest son, who was 11, looked over at me, and he saw me with tears in my eyes. And he said, "Mom, why are you crying at this movie? I shouldn't be," right? I said, "Oh, it's the sun in my eyes coming from the window." And I lied, but he got up and closed the blinds so that I could, but I was still crying. So he knew that wasn't true. And he goes, "Mom, you're still crying." And I said, "Well, kids, can you pause the movie? There's something we need to tell you." So we told the kids what was going on. And one thing I wanted to share with the people listening right now, as much as we want to say to our children, Mom's going to be fine, everything's going to be great, we don't really know that, you know? And if you promise your kids you're going to be fine, and then you're not fine, and the worst imaginable thing happens, suddenly they're in a place where they're going, "But you said you'd be fine, you lied to me." So we try to find a better way to say things. And so what we told the kids was that, you know, I know this is scary right now, because, you know, this is pretty serious what Mommy's going through, but I'm getting great care. I have wonderful doctors, and we're doing everything we can to make this go away. But I'm going to be a little bit sick for a while when I'm on medicine. But that just means that that it's working, and we're going to do everything we can to make this go away. So I might need your help. And my husband chimed in, and he goes, "You know, one thing you guys could do is keep your rooms clean, because messes really stress out Mommy. So you keep your rooms clean, and don't fight with each other, because that stresses her too." And so every time one of them would start to fight, the other one would go, "Stop fighting. We don't want to stress Mom." That was great. That was wonderful. But so that was, and it was hard, you know, but at the same time, it was, you know, they just all jumped in there. And every time I go to chemo, my son that was still home, the 12-year-old, he would run out and say, Mom, wait, I love you. And he'd give me a hug and a kiss through the window, and, you know, or run down to the car and lean in and give me a hug. But he always wanted to say that before I went off for a chemo appointment, which was really sweet. And, you know, so they did their part. My daughter's a little fashion goddess, so she made sure that I dressed appropriately, even though I didn't feel like it. And one night, when I just before my hair loss, one of the stories I wanted to share with you, just because, again, it's the little things, right?
Sure.
So I was home and I was watching TV and my hair was starting to, they said it would fall out before I was back in 3 weeks for my second treatment. And it was at that point where it was getting kind of crispy and just feeling weird. And so I knew it was a matter of days before it was all going to be gone. So my daughter, who was 15, not old enough to drive, called her friend and they came over and she said, Mom, we're running to the store. We'll be right back. So they ran to the store. I have no idea what they're up to. But then I thought, well, knowing her, she's probably going to bring me flowers or something because she's seeing that I'm kind of sad. And she comes home, not with flowers, but with a box of hair dye to turn me into a blonde. Mom, you've always wanted to be a blonde. We're going to see what you look like as a blonde. You're only going to have your hair for a week, so no big deal. If you don't like it, it's going to be gone anyway, but we're going to do this. And I thought, oh my gosh, how silly. But I'll tell you, it was fun. You know, we got up to the sink and they did all this stuff and she's blowing it dry and she won't let me look in the mirror until she's done. But I saw the look on her face and it was like, oh my gosh, like deer in the headlights. Oh, what have we done? And then she goes, you're only going to have it for a week, right? So then she turned me around and I look at my hair and it is not blonde, nor is it my brown that I was used to. It was cream of tomato soup orange. You could have poured a bowl of soup on my head and you would not have seen a difference. And it looked terrible, but it was so funny. I laughed. I mean, what can you do? And she's right. Sure. I'm only going to have it for a week. So whoop-de-doo, right? And so, but again, the little thing, that box of hair dye probably cost $6 or $7, but it wasn't that she spent a lot of money. It was that they took the time to do this just to try to make me laugh and bring a little joy into my life, if even only for a week, you know? So, well, and it's a story I remember and I tell it, you know? So it's those little things that people can do, you know?
Well, and, you know, all these years later from that moment, it seems like you remember that more than you remember the inconveniences you went through as a patient at the time. Although at the time, those seem like unsurmountable hurdles that you're facing, but you have to stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and enjoy the...
I was fortunate, Jim. I was able to take 6 months off work because I had short-term disability that I was paying extra for through my company benefits.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
So I was able to take 6 months off short-term. And so during that first 6 months, what that allowed me to do, I had just started back to school to get my college degree. And there's a story behind all that that's not worth telling here, but I don't want to use up my valuable time. But I had gone back to school and then my diagnosis hit me while I was in, you know, right there, and you know, early on, 3 months in or so. And I was taking a math class. And so I decided that even though I was staying home from work, that I could still finish that math class because I didn't want to start over again. Math is not my subject. I took bonehead algebra, which is like, you know, the lowest level, college level math class that because you got to get a math credit. So I had to have two of them, you know, I don't know, 2 classes or something. So we did math back to back and I didn't want to start over again. So I finished that. And then I decided to continue on with school. And I had friends that said, you know, you shouldn't be doing school. What are you thinking? You should just be home taking care of yourself. Well, to me, staying home and taking care of myself means lying on my couch in my stinky pajamas all day, staring at mindless television and doing absolutely nothing of value. That's what staying home and taking care of myself meant to me. I had to do something beyond that. And a phrase came to me 2 years ago from my friend Shawnee Fox, and it kind of has followed me through this last journey, but it's always been there. I just didn't have a name for it. And she calls it staying in the light. When you stay in the light, meaning doing something that you love in spite of what you're going through, you know, in spite of what you're going through, find a way to do something that brings you joy a little bit every day, even if it's just a few minutes at a time, doesn't matter. Sure. Find something that brings that joy because that takes your focus off your circumstances and puts it out beyond something bigger than you. And I have always kind of tried to live my life that way through all my diagnoses. I've had a lot of practice. And I'll tell you about some recent ones when we get to my 5th one here, because this one's the big one. But so I stayed in school and I actually was able to, they have a program called the Prior Learning Assessment Program. A lot of colleges offer that for adult learners, where you actually get college credit for things that you've done in your life, and you kind of challenge classes so you already know this stuff. And I picked up a year's worth of credits in about 4 months of writing essays. And so that gave me a jump start. And then I actually did finish my college degree. When I first got my diagnosis, they told me I had a 60% chance to make it past 5 years. And I was really glad they were wrong, because it took me 7 years to graduate. I didn't really pursue it really fast, but I did in that first year while I was going through all this treatment. And, it was really helpful to me. So all the people out there, stay in the light, find something that brings you joy. And whether it's school or now, for me now, it's painting. I always saw myself as a painter, but I never actually painted, Sure. So I didn't really think I could. And I can't say I'm a great painter, not by any sense of the imagination, but I'm more of a dabbler. But some of my dabbles are pretty decent for me,
Oh, I'm sure. Well,
I could do a show, but
having some, living in the light, or it's just having some goals of something that you want to do gives you something to look forward to, like your painting you mentioned, and finishing college, and congratulations on that, by the way. And
thank you.
It gives you something to look forward to. My physical therapist that used to come see me, he always said we were going to go play golf, and it took about 20 months, but eventually we got to go play golf together. And he had said he was going to teach me how to fly fish, which I had never done before. And
Nice. I did a fly fishing retreat, so I understand the joy of that. That was cool.
Yeah, so it was very cool, and he since passed away from cancer himself, but his wife left me with his fly rod, which is very special to me.
Yeah,
and,
that's great.
So just little things like that. I never thought I was going to get better enough to go play golf with Tuck and all of that. So it's good to have something, even if it's very simple little thing to strive and think about achieving, throughout the journey and whatnot. Yeah. So Becky, is Breast Friends just located in Oregon, or is it nationwide or international, or what's the scope of Breast Friends?
We are located in Oregon, and we've been here since the beginning. We've had some startups that we worked with initially, but or along the way, but for whatever reason, people come up with their own ideas, and so they've split off. So really, we are here in Oregon, but we have a hat project that goes out nationwide. We have a radio show that is now listened to in 113 countries.
Wow!
And that, can I tell you how that came about? Because that was
yes,
cool.
Please. I'd love to hear about it.
Really a cool story. So I'm a list maker. I've always had what I call my bucket list. That I like to say they made that movie after my list, but not really.
Sure.
But I did have my list before that movie came out. I just didn't call it that, but now I do. Anyway, I'd had a list. On my list was to speak in all 50 states, and I had spoken in 32 states.
Wow.
And then my diagnosis hit, and then COVID hit, and so nobody's doing events, and I was really I couldn't do the events when I was first diagnosed. So I haven't done any actual events. I did one this year, and so everything just kind of fell flat. And I have 18 states to go. So I was working with a gal named Cara Duffy. She has a business called Powerful Ladies, and she does podcasts as well. And through our podcast, she discovered that I had this goal to speak in all 50 states, and I had 18 to go. And she asked me one day, she said, is it important that you speak in all 50 states, or that you speak to people in all 50 states? And, sometimes we have to revise our goals a little bit because of life. Things happen, and we can't just hang on to one thing because that was on our list, and so therefore it must happen that way.
Sure.
So I thought, speaking to people in all 50 states could work. So she helped me create a page, a Facebook group. Excuse me, it's a group. It's called Breast Friends Around the Globe.
Okay.
And we started talking about this radio show. And I'm trying to get people in all 50 states, the other 18 that I was missing, to send this to the people that they know and get them to listen to my show. And then let me know where they listened from. And then I could put a little star on my map. And I'm going to get you my map. So I had this map, and I had my 32 states marked with stars.
Oh, wow.
And since then, I've been able to fill in all the rest of them with people that listen through Breast Friends around the globe.
So it looks like you've got all of them there.
I've got all of them. Now I have a big wall map. I can't get you that one. But we decided after we got all 50 states, which we have now, that we would now focus on the world and see how many listeners we can get around the globe. So I have a wall map, and I've got pins in all the spots where we've had listeners. I'm looking at it now as I'm staring off into oblivion. It's got 113 pins in that map.
That's great.
So we've been listened to by somebody in all of those countries, which is very cool. So
that's amazing.
Because of that, I guess we've become kind of global. But that's really been the emphasis of our global outreach. But people in Ireland and Italy and Israel and Africa, all these, of course, Africa's a continent. But anyway, all these people, they get cancer. And they don't know either what to do. So hopefully our show is giving them the inspiration and the hope that they need to get through this journey. And because we do this every week, they can go back and listen to every podcast we've done. Once they find us, they kind of tend to do that, which is pretty cool. Just go listen to each one, because they're always about breast cancer.
Well, that's wonderful. And we'll have links to all of the resources that Becky's mentioned today, including her book and the Breast Friends organization and the radio show and so forth. And you'll be able to find those in the description and show notes below. So they'll be easy to find. One question I had about your cancer journey, you have experienced a number of relapses and gone through different chapters of your breast cancer journey along the way. What can you tell us about those reoccurrences? And you had mentioned that you're on your fifth chapter currently. What would you like to share with us about how you found those that they came back, and what you're dealing with currently?
Okay, well, let me tell you some of those very quickly, just to kind of get through the laundry list, I guess, as we say. I had my second battle in 2004, so it was 8 years after my first one. And my youngest son, who was 11 the first time, was now 19. And I said to him, because I found the lump, I was in the shower, I just was soaping up, and I felt this lump that had finally just gotten big enough for me to feel it. And I wasn't due for another mammogram for a couple more months, but I felt it, and I thought, oh man, I don't know what's going on there, but I have a feeling. So I went in for another mammogram. It always takes a while to get things, back, the results. And I said to my son during that waiting period, I said, well, the good news is if it's cancer, I can take more time off from work. And he said, out of the mouth of babes, he says, that's a little telling, don't you think? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you'd rather have cancer than go to work? And I went, that is revealing, isn't it? And so, yeah, I kind of felt that way. So it took me another year after that to resign from my company. I retired and got my pension and got out of there. And I was really glad I did, because up until that point, we always had to work on Breast Friends part-time, because I worked a full-time job and I still had kids at home. So, excuse me, I was able to finally quit. But again, it took me a year. And then I was able to focus full-time on Breast Friends. And then Sharon quit her job and joined me a year later. And from that point forward, Breast Friends just took off like a rocket. I mean, we've been building it slowly, but things happen finally when you can focus on them.
Sure.
So that gave us something to really do. But anyway, I got through that one. I ended up that time thinking, I don't want to play this game anymore. I already had a lumpectomy on one side, and I was going to just go for the mastectomy and get it done. And I decided to do a double mastectomy and just get rid of both of them and let me heal from it, and then deal with all that reconstruction nightmare after radiation, later. So I did that. I had a double mastectomy, and that was kind of a life-changing big moment to go through that. But I did that, and then I only had to do chemo. I didn't do radiation, although now in hindsight, I kind of wish I had, because a few years later in 2017, I'd been going in every few months, for just whatever. They didn't do a lot of scans, but, for that. And then my doctor, there's two different schools of thought. You either do scans regularly or you don't do them unless there's a problem. And, but we decided it was probably time to do one. So we did one, and we found this hot spot right in my sternum. And so it had spread from my previous cancer. Probably it was not a new, the second time I had cancer was a new diagnosis. It was a new primary, as they call it. So it wasn't It spread from my right side to my left side. It just was a brand new primary. So again, having two different gene mutations that leads to a more likely evidence of breast cancer. That was probably why. So the first two were just standalone, issues. And then, but this third time when it showed up at my sternum, that was a recurrence, and it had spread from that side as the only side I, had active at that point. So we just did radiation and got rid of it. And it seemed like it was gone, totally. And then a year later on a scan, it showed up again, but it also showed up in my lungs. And I thought, oh man, that's the big deal. Showed up in my lungs. So that was 2 years ago this month. And then March of this year, so a year and a half later, on a scan, it showed up in my lungs and my liver and my bones. And in my bones, I mean, it was in my skull, it's in my hips, my ribs, my spine. It's kind of all over the place. And this was the hard one. I mean, I thought the first one was hard, but the second one, I kind of been there, done that. So I knew what to expect, and I knew, how I would get through that one again. And the third one, fourth one were just radiation. So that wasn't a big deal, but we thought we got rid of it. And then to have it show up not only there, but in my lungs and now in those other places too, that was a little harder to deal with. And my doctor, whom I love, now I have a different doctor now because my other doctor retired, but I have a new doctor, and he's wonderful. He's a young guy. He's also from back east, and they recruited him out here to Providence. And so I go to the Providence Cancer Center, and he's amazing. And he's a world-class speaker. He speaks at all kinds of events. He's a researcher, and he believes heavily in immune therapy. So he put me on some immune therapy drugs. And unfortunately for me, they didn't work. They don't work for everybody, but you don't know unless you try it. So I'm glad we tried it.
Sure.
Didn't work. And so we went back on what they call standard of care, and we tried a couple different things. And, they all work a little bit. Like you might see a slowing of growth or a standstill where it doesn't really grow, but they consider that successful because they're buying you time. If they can reverse it a little bit or keep it steady, and then it's not growing so fast. And, you have to admit it, that kind of grew pretty fast from that last time. So that, we were feeling success, but the minute it starts to go backwards, if we see any growth at all, he would take me off of it and put me on something else. So finally he got me on a new drug. It's not a new drug. It's a very old drug that I've had before. I resisted taking it because I didn't like it the first time. It's a drug called Taxol. And again, it's not for everybody, but for my kind of cancer, he said it's for the standard of care drugs. It's probably the best one I could take. And I said, I've had it before. It caused neuropathy really badly in my feet. I really don't want to take this drug. I hate it. And he convinced me that it's worth trying, but they would change the dosages and we'd do things differently. So instead of going in once every, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks and getting a heavy, heavy dose, that they do a smaller dose and you do it weekly, and then you have a week off. You do 2 weeks on, a week off. So I started doing that. The first week was terrible because he gave me the maximum dose for this schedule, and it was really hard. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything for a week. And I told my husband, I said, if this is as good as it gets, I'm done. I'm done. And I talked to my doctor and told him the same thing. He goes, no, this isn't as bad as it gets. Let's fix this. So he dropped the dosage 20%. And it's been fine ever since. I mean, I had chemo yesterday and I'm talking to you today. So
that's amazing.
So it's been good, but what's really been good, and I want to share a little story. I'm going to share a story because I believe in the power of prayer, and I have people all over the world that are praying for me. And it doesn't go lightly on me. I feel that. I feel those prayers. Well, in May of this year. So this was, remember, it was in March when I got that horrible diagnosis. And in May of this year, my husband, my doctor was telling me to use what time I had left. I won't let him give me a date. I won't let him say you have, 5 months to a year to live. I don't want to ever hear those words out of his mouth, because I know me. And remember when we talked about staying home to heal means laying on the couch in my sneaky pajamas. That's what I would do. And I would wait for that date to come. And because I know me well enough to know that. So I can't focus on that date. It just has to not be there. So he promised me he'd never tell me. And he goes, plus we'll get it wrong most of the time anyway. So he won't tell me that, but he did tell me that this would be the time to use to get, my visits in with my kids, because they're scattered all over the country now. My daughter got married in July, and she was going to move it up to May because she wasn't sure I was going to be here in July. So she was going to move it to May, but then the virus hit, and I said, we don't even know if people can travel in May, so keep it in July and you give me something to look forward to. And so I made it to her wedding. I was in great form and everything was good. And, so that's kind of where I spent. What I do now is I just set goals, little miniature goals to get through to the next stage, because I don't know how long I have. Well, in May, my husband for Mother's Day planted 7 trees at the top of we have a property down in Florence, Oregon, which is on the coast. And we have a little house on a lake, and it's about a half acre. So it's straight up a hill. And at the very top of the hill, he planted 7 trees, 1 for each child. They're all apple trees, and then 2 pear trees for us. So
wow.
They're all planted in a certain order, so I know whose tree is whose. And the pear trees, there's 1 for me and 1 for him. So we just think it's a cool thing. It'll probably feed the deer and nothing else, but that's okay. So we planted all these trees. This was in May. On July 2nd, we went to the property, and I went up the hill to look at the trees, and all of them were thriving and doing beautifully except mine. Oh. Mine was pretty much dead. All the leaves were gone. The few that remained were crispy and just waiting to fall. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my gosh, Lord, are you telling me that this is it? I'm done? Because to me, God hears our prayers, and sometimes he speaks to us in nature,
Sure.
You got to pay attention to things. I saw that tree and my heart just sank. I thought, oh, this is terrible. And it was so symbolic that everybody else's trees were thriving except mine. Mine was dead. And not quite dead, almost though. And I was heartbroken. And so a month later, we went back down there again, and I walked up to the top of the hill, and I have to admit, getting up there is hard because I have to go partway and stop and catch my breath, and I have a walking stick just to make sure I can have something for balance to hold on to fall back down the hill. And so I walked up there in August, expecting to see my tree completely withered, maybe laying on the ground. I didn't know what to expect. But when I got there, what I saw instead was my tree. Every leaf was back. My tree was as tall as all the other ones. It was green. It was thriving.
My goodness.
I have pictures on my Facebook page from July 2nd and then August 2nd. 1 month later, my tree was back in all its glory. And I was so, that was the moment this time that I knew that I was going to be okay. Now, I don't know if this will go away, but since then, since August, I had another scan here in September. And my scan, and when they do my blood markers, they draw my blood and check my tumor markers every month. And I get scans every 3 months. Well, right after that, I got a tumor marker scan, and my tumor markers were, and I know a lot of people won't know what these are, but they're a number that's considered an acceptable range. And so, for example, they test 3 tumor markers. One of them is normal is 0 to 38. Mine was 600. And then in this last scan in September, it had gone down. And then there's one in August and one in September. They'd gone down both months. And that one is now 195. That was 600.
Wow.
Almost
that was dropped dramatically.
Yeah. So I had another one yesterday. We'll see how those turn out. And then another one with 0 to 3 is normal. And mine was 21. And then it was 7. And this last time was 3. So we're back in the normal range on that one.
That's great.
And then I have another one that 0 to 32 is normal, and mine was over 400, and this last time was 88.
Wow.
So I don't know what this next one is going to be, but I'm pretty excited that it's. I've had two since they peaked out, and they've both gone down, and so now it's interesting to see what's going to happen again.
Well, that's wonderful that they're dropping all of them dramatically.
And then there's even more than that. I had a lump on my side that I could feel, and I thought maybe it was scar tissue from a procedure that they did when they tried to pull some fluid out of my lungs. That was about a 4-day hospital stay. And right at where that came out, there was a lump there that was getting bigger, and it felt, I thought maybe it was scar tissue, but my doctor felt it, and he goes, no, I'm sorry to say, but I think this is probably a tumor that's expanding beyond the wall of my rib cage. It's gone, completely gone.
Wow.
Can't feel it. He can't feel it. And all of my tumors, because I just had a scan here, my 3-month scan. We just had it in October, and it is, they're all smaller. Not by a lot. They're still there. I still have cancer in all 3 spots, but it's still in my liver, it's still in my lungs, it's still in my bones, but everything is shrinking, and one tumor went down 66%. So wow. It's like, thank you, Lord. And
absolutely.
So I know that prayer works. It's always up to God if he's going to honor that prayer, but I'm claiming it because I'm seeing such great results from this. And so I never want people to lose hope, because there is always hope. And the power of prayer is very, very powerful. And so wherever you are in this journey, there's a couple things I want to kind of end all of this on, because I think it's just some really good thoughts. We talked about humor, and we talked about staying in the light, doing the things that bring you joy. But hope is so important. And I want to say to you, in my book, there's a picture of a trip my husband and I took to New York. It was in 1993. It was 3 years before my first battle. And it was an award trip that I won. And we were on a boat going past, out in the, whatever. Anyway, in the background were the Twin Towers. And when I published my book in 2004, I was going through my photos looking for things that were meaningful to me. And that picture was right there. And I thought, that's a really powerful picture, because by then, the 9/11 had already happened by the time I published my book. So that's, the Twin Towers are just in the background. They're almost kind of fuzzy because the emphasis is on my husband and me in the foreground. But I put that in my slideshow when I speak, and I have it in my book. And it's just a great reminder to us that our lives can change in an instant. Not only for bad, because like that day, 9/11, 3,000 people lost their lives that day, and not one of them went to work in that building that morning expecting to be dead by 9 o'clock. Right. None of them. We lost 3,000 people, and that's unacceptable. But how many of them lost their lives with things still undone,
Sure.
And so don't wait for someday to do that thing that you always wanted to do. Get your bucket list out, make a list. Talk to somebody and tell them what's on your list, because that's the real magic. That's when the magic happens, is when you tell people what's on your list. When my husband, he didn't even know I had a list. I never told him. But when he saw my list, oh my gosh, he started making things pop for me left and right. And one of the things I wanted to do that was on my list was to speak at my graduation. And I graduated in 2003. And he found out about my list, at some point, but that was one of the things he knew I wanted to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
He reached out to a local person here who writes in the newspaper, and she wrote about my list, but something kind of crazy had happened. I had reached out to my counselor and told him that it was my goal to speak at graduation. And he said, "Are you graduating this year?" I said, "No, I got 2 years to go." And he says, "Let's talk about it in 2 years." So I started bugging him again. And 2 weeks before graduation, 2 weeks, I'm thinking I got a one-shot deal at this to make it happen. And it didn't happen, but I was nagging the crud out of him, And finally, 2 weeks before graduation, I got a phone call from the dean of students who asked me if I would like to speak at graduation.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's when my husband reached out to the Oregonian and told them about it. And then it made its way into Woman's World magazine, and I was just crazy stuff. But it, you tell somebody. And when he found out that one of my goals was to spend a week at a bed and breakfast in Vermont with him in the fall to see the leaves, He said, I didn't know you wanted to do that. By that night, we had reservations on the airline and we had reservations at a B&B.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So find someone who can get excited about your goals on your bucket list with you, because they will probably help you make it happen. Things started just jumping as soon as he knew. Man, things started clicking. So, I've crossed off almost everything on my list now. Still a couple things, but anyway, there's one of them is to sing with Kenny Loggins sometime. I really,
oh, wow.
really, I love his music, and I would love to
that
sing.
That sounds great.
So that would be
I'd like
fun.
to be there for that.
Yeah. And so one of the things I love to do is sing. I sing with an 18-piece swing orchestra. We haven't practiced since COVID happened.
I saw one of your videos.
Oh, you did?
That was amazing.
Oh, thanks. They're on YouTube. Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks. So those are fun, and I love doing that. They've been around forever, and I'm just a substitute singer with them when their real singer can't be there. So they ask me to do it, and I love it.
You were really good.
Thank you very much. It's really fun. So, those things are important, but those are also the things that give you hope. And it's kind of like this last scan. When I got the news of my last scan that my tumors were shrinking, the other scans didn't sound so good, So you never know that next phone call that you get, that next email that you get, the next time I see my tumor markers, and they're shrinking, or maybe you lost your job and the next phone call you get is from somebody you put an application with, 3 years ago, and they go, hey, we have an opening again and we kept your application on file like we said we would. That's how my husband got his job. He works for Salvation Army. He's been there for 15 years now, actually.
Oh, wow.
And he had applied for that job 3 years before, and they didn't hire him. They narrowed it down to like the top 2, and he was one of them, but they picked somebody else. And then 3 years later, right when he really needed a job, because I had just left mine, he got that job. And I was like, okay. So, and he's been there ever since. So he's, it's been a great job for him, because he fundraises for them, and it's been great. Good fit. So never lose hope, because that next phone call could change your life. That next person that walks into your life could be the person that just changes everything. The silly little hat that was given to me on the spur of the moment was just a beautiful thing, and it gave me hope. So don't lose hope, because without it, you have nothing, and with it, you have everything.
Sure.
So
well, Becky, as we kind of nearing the end here, I just want you to know you'll be in my prayers for your ongoing challenges that you're working through, and I'm optimistic for the best possible outcome for you with that. And folks, will have links to everything that Becky has shared with us today, from her book to Breast Friends to the radio show and podcasts and all the other resources that you've shared with us here today, Becky. And although you've kind of touched on a little bit, the final question that I would like to ask, and if you could just kind of add anything to what you've just said here prior, if you were speaking directly to someone who had just found out that they have cancer, or specifically breast cancer, or a reoccurrence of their cancer, if there's one parting thought you'd like to say to them, what would that be? That's such a great question, and it comes up so often, and I think my answer to this changes sometimes based on thoughts that I'm having, or who the person is and what they're going through. But treatments have gotten better. They're getting better at figuring this whole thing out and how to stop it early, and with immune therapy, that when it does work, it's a miracle. I mean, it can actually make cancer go away if it works on you. There's just so much more to be excited about in this. But the bottom line is, and this has become kind of more my focus than anything, and that is to stay in the light. When you think about, if you picture in your mind a little golf ball in your house rolling across the floor, and you see it going into a little dark corner of your living room or something. You see this golf ball doing that. It's easy to roll a golf ball into a dark corner, isn't it? That's kind of like when we're going through something, we can roll into a dark corner pretty easily. All it takes to get that ball out of that corner and out of that darkness is to just swat it with a little
anything, push it another direction, right? And sometimes we need to be that person for that person in our life that's going through this. We need to be that one watching them roll into the dark corner and help them get out of it. Remind them that there are things and ways to look at this a little bit differently. But the key is to stay in the light. Find something that brings you joy. Ask yourself when you're watching this interview that we're having, what brings me joy? What do I like to do? If you like to read, or you like to write, or you like to paint, or you like to sew, or whatever it is you like to do. If you like to talk to your family, we have a weekly fam jam, as we call it, where the kids, we all get together at 1:30 on a Thursday. So it's this afternoon, and we all just zoom in and talk to each other about what's going on in our lives today. So find things to talk about and to do that bring you joy and take you outside of this circumstance, because this circumstance is difficult and it's hard and it's ugly, and there's nothing good about it except for where it can lead. And if I hadn't gotten breast cancer, we wouldn't have Breast Friends, wouldn't have the radio show. I wouldn't have a topic to speak about, because I've always wanted to be a professional speaker, but darn it, I found out you need a topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I tried to do it with sales, but I just couldn't get a door to open. But when I got cancer, suddenly some doors opened for me, and that's my topic now. I'm a 5-time survivor. So, there's just so much that we can learn from each other. So think about the blessings in this. Think about the people that you're meeting for the first time that you've never met before, and maybe you haven't met them yet, but you will. Think about those people and how they've impacted your life in such a positive way, and the good that can come from this, because it can. It's not all gloom and doom. Yeah, scary as can be. I get that. And especially this one for me, because this one, when my doctor's telling me to go visit my family while I still can, that spoke volumes to me. And so I'm doing that. My kids have been here to see me. I've gone to see them. We've done all that, and we're still doing that. And I will continue to do that because it's fun. And even though it's COVID crazy, just be safe and fly Delta, because they're doing it right. Sorry, well, I should put in a plug for Delta on this one, shouldn't I?
Oh, that's
anyway, fine. Yeah, they've done a great job. They don't book the middle seats. They only fly out no more than 60% full, and they're doing it right. So that's my airline of choice now. So we've been safe on every airline, and every flight that we've done, and it's been a decent experience, to do all that. But to see my kids, it's so worth it. And my doctor even said to me, he goes, some things are risky, like flying and traveling right now. But in my case, he says, it's probably worth it. It's worth the risk, because I need to see my family and spend time with them. So use this time to spend time with your family, regardless of what your outcome is predicted to be. See your family, take a chance, pull the cancer card, whatever. So I got cancer, I want to come see you, or come see me because I need it, but whatever. Your family is usually there for you, but they don't always know what you need either. So ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to accept help when people offer it. And if you need help, talk to Breast Friends, reach out to Breast Friends through, our website is breastfriends.org, and you can reach out that way, and there are people there that would be willing to talk with you. So do that. We also have a Facebook group called Breast Friends of Oregon, and you can post things. Well, actually, that's not a group, that's a page, but you can see what we're up to and comment. So there's different ways to get involved. So I would do that, and and listen to positive stories and podcasts, and stay out of politics. It's terrible what we're going through right now. But so it's just a lot of different things that you can tell a person. So just depends on where they're at and what they're really feeling. Our first goal at Breast Friends always is to kind of reel them off the ceiling. They call us and they're just frantic, and everybody's frantic, and I get it. That's where I was, but we can reel them back, and I think talking to a survivor, someone who's been there, is very helpful.
I think that's a wonderful resource for people, especially with breast cancer, to be able to reach out to Breast Friends. And we'll have links to all of those resources that you mentioned, and any others that you didn't mention, ways people can learn more about you and your organization. And, Becky, those certainly are great words of advice that you've given, and I can certainly see how you earned the title as a motivational speaker, because given all that you've been through and all that you're going through, you have such a happy spirit and positive outlook and a heart of giving to others that just comes through just talking with you here for the last hour or so. And, I hope that anyone listening, can get as much inspiration and joy out of the, conversation we had here today. And I like your phrase, stay in the light. And, it's just, as discouraged and sad and all those types of feelings that we can feel when we experience learning about our cancer and our diagnosis and so forth, being able to find that ray of light and the positive side of it each day, and not worry about weeks and months into the future, and focus on what can bring us joy that day. That's just kind of a feeling that I'm taking away from our conversation here today, and just so thankful for everything that you shared with us. And it was a real honor to have you here on the podcast and for sharing the journey with us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Jim, so much for inviting me. It just means the world to me. So I appreciated all your questions too. So you did a great job. You're a good interviewer. So I appreciate that.
I think I've got a lot to learn, and I can learn a lot from you. And I'm going to be looking through your podcast archives and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you.
Taking notes.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Join Breast Friends around the globe too. And then if you listen to a podcast, make a comment, because you can actually have to admit you in. But once you're in, which will be right away, because I don't waste any time doing that. But you can actually post comments there because it's a group page. So
okay.
I'd love to have your feedback on any episode you might have listened to.
Well, wonderful. I'll be sure to do that. And thank you.
And post a link to your podcast too, so people can hear it.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So as Becky said, please take a moment and leave your comments below, and take a look at the description and show notes below for all of the links to the book and the Breast Friends organization and all the other resources that Becky has shared with us today. And if you found this information helpful, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. And lastly, just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we wish you the absolute best possible outcome with your cancer journey. So until next time, please take care, and we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.